Good evening, and thank you for listening to Voir Dire, a legal podcast about recent items in the news that relate to legal matters and anything legal related. Voir dire is a French term that means to speak the truth, and that's what we, that is our goal here at Voir Dire. Whether we have a guest or I am providing some commentary on some recent news events, or just trying to help educate the listening audience as to legal issues. We are here to speak the truth. We're not going to put any kind of spin on it. We'll just tell it the way it is. Voir dire, speak the truth. So it's been a couple of weeks since I've been able to podcast. Unfortunately, I had a busy trial schedule, which did not permit me much time to sit and focus, and then I had a crazy travel schedule. I even went to such great lengths as to come up with basically a portable podcast studio, which we're using right now, but I never got around to it just because of the schedule, and it just didn't quite work out. So tonight, we're not at the Voir Dire studios at the Reisch law firm offices. We are at the abode of Scott Reisch here, basically at my kitchen table, because it was too many steps to get up to the home office. But the first thing I want to talk about is kind of where we left off. We were talking about the Christopher Watts case, which is just north of Denver, up in Weld County. And for those of you who don't know, or just a little background, is Christopher Watts lives in Frederick, Colorado. It's a small community just north of Denver, roughly about 12 miles or so. It's in Weld County, Colorado, which was for many years very rural farming, oil and gas type of industry. A lot of home development that's gone on over the last couple of years, and a lot of young families have moved in there. Anyway, so several weeks ago, Chris Watts reported that his wife and two young daughters were, in fact, missing, and went to the police, told them his story. The police became concerned, started doing interviews. They put it out to the news media that Shannon Watts and her two children are gone. They have no idea, and Mr. Watts is quite concerned. He even got to the point where he was on the news telling his story as to their last encounter and is the grieving husband as far as not having his wife and daughters there. And then a few weeks ago, Mr. Watts, Christopher Watts, allegedly talked again to the police in Frederick, and he came up with a story that, yes, I killed my wife, but I did not kill my two young daughters. Now, Mr. Watts should have consulted a criminal defense attorney worth their salt. Possibly even a first-year law student could have told him quite easily to not say a word because he is going to be charged for first-degree murder of his wife, which is not only a capital offense here in the state of Colorado, but if he's convicted, it would carry a minimum of 10 years to life. I'm sorry, 10 years to life. How about the rest of your natural life with no possibility of parole? Where did that come from? Probably the last case I was dealing with this evening. Anyway, so Mr. Watts says, yeah, I killed my wife, but the reason I killed her was because I was watching through the baby monitor, and my wife had killed my daughters, and I had to kill her because I was so upset. Well, where Mr. Watts' story then really starts to crumble is that instead of calling the police and saying I killed my wife in the heat of passion, which is a significantly reduced charge, he then proceeds to take his body's wife and those of his children to the work site where he works at in Weld County. He happens to work for a very reputable oil and gas company, big oil and gas company, and he worked at this particular well site. And he apparently, allegedly, dug a shallow grave around that well site and stuck his wife's body in it. Then he takes his daughter's bodies, 2 of them, and basically plops them into tanks that hold oil and gas, that hold oil that is pumped out of the ground. Now understand this, ladies and gentlemen. What was this man thinking? Okay? He kills his wife, allegedly kills his wife, then he dumps their body in the grave and dumps the children's bodies in the oil tanks. That makes no sense. This man is going to have a very difficult case, and I am very sympathetic to his defense attorneys in this matter, as they're going to have a difficult case to do. And Mr. Watts is given the presumption of innocence. As a criminal defense attorney, I will be the first one to give that to him. And if and when the prosecution can prove their case unanimously to each and every element offense to a jury, then he will no longer be presumed innocent. But as someone that's commentating on this particular case, it's quite clear there's going to be a difficult road ahead. Now, some recent developments. Just today, the public defenders that Mr. Watts had was filing papers saying that the district attorneys or the police department had leaked information to the press, basically alleging that, the contents of his statements to the police, that he had killed his wife in anger over he allegedly seen his wife kill his 2 children. As the district attorney points out in their pleadings, was that the information that came from was in pleadings actually filed by the defense. So I don't see that particular motion going much of anywhere in this case. It seems like filing some Hail Mary motions early, and I am assuming they're going to continue to come often. Now, there's also some recent developments that's alleged that Mr. Watts was having an extramarital affair with a coworker, and that there were financial pressures based on the family, that they were basically in debt. They were contemplating filing for bankruptcy and asking for basically a new start. And, the other information, obviously, that has been out there, and, the deceased child in the womb, she was 15, the mother, Shannon Watts, was 15 weeks pregnant with an unborn child. It's pretty clear, pretty obviously easy to see what the district attorney's theory of the case will be. A lot of people don't know this. They always think about it's on TV. Oh, they have to show motive. Why would he want to do it? But the theory of the case is really the motive here in this particular case. I would completely anticipate that the district attorney is going to show that he was having an affair. He didn't like being married. He didn't like being in debt. He didn't like the fact that he had another child coming, and what's the best way to get rid of it? He killed all these people and then concocted this story, and that he is not a truthful person. So, like I said, Mr. Watts has a few more weeks until his preliminary hearing will go, if it goes at all. And then after the preliminary hearing, which is a very low standard of proof, at a preliminary hearing, the government only has to put on enough evidence to show that probable cause exists. Would a reasonable person believe that a crime was committed and that the crime was committed by Mr. Watts, allegedly? At that particular hearing, the defense may or may not call any witnesses. The defense never has the burden to do that. They'll usually cross-examine and use that basically as a way to get as much information as possible. The case is not going to go away at a preliminary hearing because the evidence, the legal standard is that the evidence has to be viewed in the light most favorable to the prosecution, drawing all inferences in their favor. Therefore, the case will be bound over for an arraignment to the district court. at the district court level, the matter will be set for an arraignment. Once the arraignment is set, a couple of things can take place. There can be a guilty plea. I don't think Mr. Watts will have a guilty plea at his first arraignment setting unless there was some sort of negotiation going on right now between the district attorneys who are possibly contemplating doing the death penalty. And so therefore, maybe in exchange for that, he would plead guilty to multiple life sentences in exchange for not doing the death penalty. And if Mr. Watts did in fact kill his children, that would be an honorable way to do this, not put the families through that emotion and trauma, because he's already confessed to killing one person, his wife. So it would seem reasonable that that would be there. They could obviously, the defense could ask for a continuance of that, saying that there needs to be further investigation. But frankly as things go here, this is not a very complex case as far as murders go. They're probably waiting on some test results. That may delay it, some DNA samples. Who knows what was able to be recovered from those bodies, being the fact that they were dipped in oil, allegedly by Mr. Watts, as he's admitted to dumping the bodies of his 2 young children in the oil wells. The other thing that can take place is they can enter a plea of not guilty, and at that point, the state would then have a burden of getting Mr. Watts to a trial within 6 months from that date. If the government did not, and I assure you that they would, the case would be dismissed on a speedy trial violation count. But that's not going to happen. Additionally, if the case is going to go death, the district attorney must notify the prosecution and the court of their intentions to do so within a few weeks after that arraignment. And I can assure you, as somebody who's done a case where there was talk of the death penalty, it's a very nerve-wracking time because you have to literally start doing mitigation. What can we do to save this person's life? And really work on that, and you're not really being focused upon the facts of the particular case. And you really have to be focused on all of those at the time. And then we'll see if there's a plea bargain in this case, or whether it goes to trial, and ultimately whether there's a death penalty case. Death penalty case, I would say, would be pretty stronger in Weld County than it would be in lots of jurisdictions here in the state of Colorado. Denver, don't think it would happen. Arapahoe County, where we had the Aurora Theater shooting case that was the death penalty case, couldn't even get death in that particular case, but there was clearly some mental health issues going on with that particular defendant. Even in very conservative Colorado Springs, just recently, a case was a death penalty case, and the prosecution was unable to do that. Weld County, I can't recall of a death penalty case up there, and so I really don't know, but it's a very conservative jurisdiction. But like all jurisdictions here in the state of Colorado, it's kind of swaying more purple. So you never know, and you only need one person to say no death. So it's going to be very interesting to see between now and the arraignment date whether negotiations are had, and I'm sure they are going on, as to what can we do to resolve this case short of the potential death penalty. But the district attorneys like that death penalty option on the table. It's a good bargaining chip for them, and that's why most DAs like it, and they don't want to get rid of the death penalty because it is the ultimate bargaining chip. Oftentimes you get people to plead straight up guilty just by taking that off the table. I've dealt with that in several cases over the years, and it's persuasive when you go tell your client, here's the deal. If you don't do this, they're going to go potentially death. That can really motivate people to make decisions. So Mr. Watts has got some trouble, but we here at Voir Dire will be speaking the truth about Mr. Watts' case. If we identify strengths or weaknesses in the defense and the prosecution, we are going to let you know. And I promise you, now that we have basically the home studio set up, even if it is on my kitchen table and looking straight into my living room, the fact that it's merely here and set up is more likely that I'll actually do it versus trying to find the time at the office during the day or evening to take care of that. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We're definitely going to be following the Christopher Watts case. It is going to be absolutely intriguing to see how this plays out. This is the kind of case that captures the attention of a lot of people simply for the fact that you've got it all. You have allegations of extramarital affairs. You have allegations of financial problems. Supposedly the perfect family, 2 young kids, nice couple who apparently love each other, a new baby on the way, and apparently it's a complete sham. And let me tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, most people out there, most people are living a double life in some way or the other. And everybody that's out there that thinks that, everything's perfect in their particular world is usually not. So come on back. If you are listening on the podcast, please download, subscribe, come back. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell, and we'll let you know when we're talking again about the Christopher Watts case. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you again. Thank you for listening to Voir Dire.